Nathan Simmons. I'm here to present my design project for EGR 285. I decided to design and program a home alarm system. The application I have it on is just a foam board house with different power supplies, more power over a longer range, and more switches and all that could be used, implemented on a house. But here's my presentation. The objective of my project was to create a home alarm system, like I just said. I wanted to have a keypad so you could disarm it with a passcode. I wanted you to set two different settings for it to be on. I have a home setting, which will only allow the magnetic reed switches, or what you find on like your doors and windows. We'll only allow those to be set. And then I have an away mode where there's 2 motion sensors inside the house that will activate also along with the magnetic reed switches. This is just a small inventory I had of everything I used. I used the Arduino Mega microcontroller to program everything on. Used project foam board for the house, the different switches and sensors. I have a keypad on it. Of course, you use wire for everything. All the supplies needed to build a 5-volt DC power supply, hot glue, LEDs, and then I also used the programming software by Arduino, their Arduino IDE, which is the software you use to program on their microcontrollers. I had a couple issues while designing and programming my project. One of the issues I had was I had planned on using a simulation software called Fritzing. It's made for Arduino boards. You could put any microcontroller into it and use it virtually instead of actually needing the microcontroller. But you could also, one good thing about the software, you could also build your circuit or your project, whatever you're working on a virtual breadboard and do it all virtually on your computer instead of actually having to build it. I ran into some issues with it. I couldn't use my particular type of keypad on there. The keypad I used has 13 pins, 12 of them are set to certain buttons, and one of them is a common, where most of them run in a type of matrix to use less I/O, less cable. But that was one issue. It would have changed my programming completely. Instead of the way I have it programmed, I would have had to change it once I got done using the simulation software. Another issue is once you start getting enough on their breadboard, having wires ran and all that in the simulation, it would crash on me. I don't know if that was an issue I was having or if it was an issue with the program. One big thing I did while building the project, when I was programming the keypad itself, I set it up first in the software where the common pin was set as a high voltage. Instead of it being off, it was on. When I would do that, you could get close to it. You didn't have to press a button. It would start sending signals. I had no clue what was going on with it. I did some research, posted in a couple forums, and found out the issue I was having was floating pins. They're super sensitive pins on these microcontrollers, so any voltage detected at all, enough voltage to be carried through the air by your hand, will set these pins off. I found out to fix this, you could use a pull-off resistor, or you could flip how you set your pins up. So instead of the common being high, I set the common pin on my keypad as low and set the I/O pins as high, and would ground them out to get the signal I needed instead of sending them signal. Another issue with the keypad I had was actually programming the password. When I first started, as long as you pressed what buttons you used as your passcode, along with any other buttons, it would work. Now, the 4 you used as your passcode, you had to have in there, but you could press them in any combination along with any additional numbers, and it would unlock. From that point, I got it down to where the code, you would have to press your numbers in order But if you press your orders and numbers and pressed any other numbers and hit star, it would unlock. Doing research, I looked at different types of things that I just looked for anything I could find to help me with it. I read some stuff up about arrays and adding to arrays. Couldn't quite get that figured out with the Arduino software. After researching, I found out the issue was in my logic. And I did some changing with my logic in my program, which I'll show you here in a little bit. That if you didn't press 1 to begin with, because the password's 1, 2, 3, 4 star, just something simple. If you didn't press 1 to begin with, nothing else would happen. Then I got to the issue where if you press 1, then 2, you could press any other buttons. As long as 1 and 2 got hit, you could continue with your numbers. So then I set it up so that if 1's hit, it unlocks the availability to hit 2. If you hit any other number than 2, it resets 1, which gets rid of your ability to use 2 again. And it's kind of hard to talk about without showing you the program, which I'll get to here in a second. In the beginning, I was planning on using a 5-volt DC power supply with my motion sensors because I didn't think the Arduino board would have enough power to power everything. But the way I ran my magnetic reed switches and my keypad, it really uses no power at all. Very little power. When I plugged up my power supply to my motion sensors, it was causing interference no matter if I ran resistors with it, anything like that. It would automatically set the motion sensor. I have the power supply with me today so I can show you that it does work. But the Arduino board was perfectly fine with handling the power load for the motion sensors, so I just used the power on there. A couple things I learned. I learned a lot about programming with Arduino. It had been a while, about a year since I had done any programming with Arduino at all. So I kind of had to relearn a bunch of the commands and logic because I just haven't done it. Also, just because you have a plan that you think's thought out, well planned, you're going to run into issues and you need to be prepared to be able to handle those issues and fix them accordingly. The alarm system itself, meant to replicate a home alarm system. I built it from a home floor plan, 3-bedroom. When you are ready to start using it, when you boot the system, it starts in a disarm mode, so no alarm can be set or anything like that. When you want to set the alarm, you'll press 8#. That'll set the system into the home mode. So you're at home at night, you're going to be in the house moving around, but you want your alarm system on, you set it at home so you don't trip any motion sensors inside your house. To disarm it from that point, you have to press 1, 2, 3, 4 star. The passcode is changeable. It only takes about 5 minutes to change some code around to change the password. If you want to set it in away mode, you'll press 9#. That sets it up so the magnetic reed switches on the doors and windows are set and the motion sensors are set. To disarm it from there, you have to type in the passcode. I will show you, well, let me show you an example of my code really quick. This area right here, that is the variable declaration that you need to, you could do it without variable declaration, but it would be confusing and you couldn't read what you were typing. This first part here is the variable declaration for the keypad, just the keypad itself. These are set for just LEDs to light up certain LEDs when it needs. These are the 4 digits of your passcode and the star for your passcode. These are just extra variables I needed to be able to name and change throughout the program. This area right here is your pin declaration. This is where you tell if you want your pin to be an input or an output, and if you want it set to be high. Or high or low, which means voltage or no voltage on it already. This area right here is the actual passcode part. As you can see, if this, which is the number on the keypad, reads low, if it grounds itself out, password 1 equals 1. Then if any other number is set to low, it resets the password. Goes on through for 1 through 4 and star on putting in your password. As far as everything else, is pretty simple. Mostly getting the keypad to work correctly with a passcode was pretty difficult. I will show you the system. I also have some examples of what I used for the magnetic reed switches and motion sensors, if anybody wants to check them out just to look at them. So now I have the system booted up. I'm going to arm the system. You'll see a yellow light come on for away. System's armed. If you open any of the windows or door, the alarm sets. You can close the window, the alarm stays set until you type in your passcode. The system disarms. We'll set a motion sensor off. It starts off set. The motion sensor's taking pictures of its surroundings pretty much. It's seeing what's in the way. The red light goes off. There's a motion sensor right here in the hallway, so I'll go through this door to set it. Set. So motion sensor sets it off, disarm it, set it again. Motion sensors are resetting themselves. When that light goes off, I'll set this motion sensor off on the side. Off, set off on the side, and that's my project.